In this video, we're going to be checking out the latest experimental feature for Novamira, and that is the visual way of working. Now, I want to emphasize right at the beginning of this video, if you're watching this at the time of release, this is very much experimental. So please bear that in mind if you want to test this out for yourself. You may get quirks, things not working the way you expect, all the kinds of things you should know about using an experimental feature. And if you are using a live site with Novamira, I would recommend at this point in time maybe just doing this on a staging site or a test site before you start pushing things live. With that out of the way, let me show you first of all how you connect things up, because things are a little bit different now to the normal way in which we've been working previously. So I've got Codex open on the left-hand side, and I've got my normal sort of website set up on the right-hand side. Now we come to Novamira, you'll see there's the visual option, and as you can see, a nice red banner that says experimental. So let's just open this up. And you see now we get a new sort of onboarding set. So this is what we're going to do. I've got the Pro version installed, which means that I can work with Elementor and or bricks. If you're just using the free version of Novamira, you'll be able to use this with the block editor, the Gutenberg block editor. So bear that in mind. Click on Get Started. Then what you're going to do is you're going to choose what AI client you're using. I'm using Codex, so I'm going to choose that option from the list. And then simply I'm going to copy this prompt. I'm going to come over into Codex and I'm going to paste that in. We're going to just choose to send this, and then we're going to let it go through and handle the connection. The reason we need to do this is because there's a certain sort of way in which you have to approach this. We have to get a code that's set up when we create our Codex or Claude or whatever connection you're setting up in the next step of this particular connection wizard. So let's let this run through, and once that's finished, we'll move on to the next stage. Now, because I originally had an MCP, a normal connection set up here, it's gone through, adjusted that for me, and then come back with the visual code that we need. If this is a first MCP connection to a site using Novamira, where you want to test this experimental visual version out, you won't have to go through this. It'll be slightly different, but the end result will be exactly the same. We now have our visual code, so we're going to copy that, click Done, Connect. This asks for our visual code. This will be changed afterwards, so don't think you can use my visual code connection. Add that in, click on Connect, and we'll say, yeah, we're going to allow that for this site, and we're going to say we're going to allow it for this session, and click OK. And there we go. We're going to let that go through the connection side of things. There we go. Now we are connected and everything is all working. So connected to your AI client, you may need to restart Codex or Claude or whatever you're using if you're setting up a new MCP, just so be aware of that. If you find that things don't connect immediately, just restart and you should be all set up and good to go. So now that we've connected everything up, we can now move on to creating a new page. So we'll choose the option from the top of our screen and we'll say, let's go to the WordPress dashboard. That will open up now a new tab, and inside there we've got our dashboard. So now what we can do is we can start creating pages and so on in a visual fashion. Now, if you don't know what I mean, normally when you're working with Codex alongside something like WordPress in whatever tools you're using, you're kind of working in both in isolation. However, with this, the visual way of working means that we will see what's happening on screen at the same time. So imagine like you've got a remote desktop connection and you're seeing someone external making those changes, added content in, added structures in, all those kinds of things. You'll basically see that. So it's a less kind of segregated workflow where you'll type it, ask it to do something, and it will then show you inside the actual builder or editor, whatever you're using. So for this, let's come over to our pages and let's add a new page in. We'll give this a name. We'll just call it Novamira Visual and we'll publish this. And we are done. Now you'll notice that this does not show the bricks editor sort of button. Now, again, this is one of those things, this may be a quirk of the fact that this is still a beta product and it's experimental, or it may just be the way in which this working with bricks and so on. So let's just come back out of this, and all we need to do is come over, there's our Novamira visual, edit that with bricks, and it takes us into the bricks editor. So it doesn't really matter too much, it's just an extra step, but hopefully that will be something that will be rectified. Now we've got this all set up and open, there is something you do need to know, and that is you have to have whatever editor you're working on open for Novamira to kind of connect up and work in a visual fashion. So we're going to leave this window open as we work inside Codex. So let's start off by asking it to create something like a hero section. Now, I want to show you what I've got set up in my environment so you know what I'm working with. And just know that this is not going to be an in-depth demo of creating complex page layouts and so on. This is more just a demonstration of how Novamira and the visual function works and interacts with, in this example, bricks, but in a fundamentally the same way as Elementor or Gutenberg. So if I want to come into the styles, you'll see I've got set up some colors. I've also got set up some classes, and I've got theme styles set up and configured, and we've got a bunch of variables, most of which are being created just using the native functions inside bricks. Again, not overly important. You can do the same thing with Elementor. If you want to have your classes and so on set up there, you can do that as well. I've also got a design.md file in the folder for this particular project, and I've got some rules set up inside there for telling it how I want to interact with, in this example, bricks, to use things like my variables, create classes in certain instances, and so on. So you are always going to get a better result if you're using a kind of design.md file, or you set up rules and things inside Novamira, like I've covered in previous videos showing you how to set those up. So with that out of the way, let's come back out of this and let's ask it to do something. Okay, so I've put in what I wanted to do, so I'm going to let it carry on and do that. I've also instructed it to use the design.md file just in case it doesn't, and also to add any future rules that we apply to that design.md file for this particular project and session, just to make sure that instead of me having to kind of go back and tell it to do the same thing again and again, we have that set up. Now, you will potentially find sometimes you get good results, sometimes you get average results, sometimes you get terrible results. Unfortunately, that's the whole point of this being an experimental feature. It is in its early stages, and feedback from people like yourself and from myself will help shape the way this actually moves forward. So let's try this now. Let's get to go and do what I want to do. So we'll hit send and ask it to go ahead and do it. So I'm going to let that run. I will speed things up so you don't have to sit here and watch me. And once it's finished, we'll come back and review what ends up on the page. And there we go. You've now seen, hopefully with a sort of time-lapsey kind of thing, the whole process. Now, parts of it are quite slow, and that's primarily dependent upon the sort of AI tool you're using, what tools you're using inside, the actual editor itself. We're using like native Gutenberg functions or Elementor or bricks and so on, and how well you've trained the design.md file. All these things are going to play a contributing factor to the results you're going to get. And this is something that is indicative of any kind of AI tool. But the visual way of seeing it actually build things out is kind of interesting. You'll see that it's also catered for the responsive side of things. So if we go back to the desktop version, you can see it's given us the full width. Our tablet portrait, you can stack in things on top of each other, and the same then for the other breakpoints. So good to see that it's actually taken care of that. And if we look at the structure down the right-hand side, again, it's done a pretty decent job of setting things up here. We've got sections, containers, divs. I tend to use blocks, but it doesn't really matter too much. It's all set up how you want to use it. And if we come into something like the heading, for example, you can see it's set as the H1 tag, like I asked it. The second one is set as the H2, so exactly what I've asked it to do. So semantically it's correct. Come into styles, for example, and typography, it's using our variables. Same thing goes for the heading 2. That's using the text L. That doesn't matter too much because from a visual point of view, that's perfectly fine. The semantics are there. It's just a case of it's using various different styling for the actual size of the text, which is generally exactly what I would end up doing anyway. So again, these are things you could train your MD file to do. But quite cool, you can actually set this up to visually do these kinds of things. And you'll notice it tells me that it's edited the design.md file with any changes that I've asked it to do. Now, let's just say I'm okay with most of that, but I want to make a couple of changes. For example, this button, the first button, I would prefer to be the primary color. So let's tell it to do that. So I'm just telling it to make some changes to the buttons. Let's see what it does. And again, we should visually see these changes taking effect. So let's tell it to go ahead and do that. As you can see, it's referencing my variable, so the primary for the color, the radius, M for the actual corners. You can see it's picked up the radiuses straight away and implemented those for us. And you can see it's now also updated the first button to take into account using the primary color, this kind of blue color. But as you can see, it's telling us down the left-hand side what it's doing, as we would expect from something like Codex. But we can also then visually see these changes taking effect on screen in front of us. So this is basically how the Novamira visual editor works. We can use the normal Codex, Claude, whatever you want, connect it up, and then we can have the window open and we have a visual way of seeing exactly what's going on. Now, obviously, this is, like I say at the beginning of the video, an experimental feature. So please understand that things are not always going to work the way you expect. There are going to be kind of quirks and strange things going on. But I would encourage you to get involved in the Novamira Facebook group and give your feedback on anything you see that's working well, not working well, to help the guys over at Novamira create the best product they can for this visual way of working. As always, though, all applicable links are in the description, and I welcome your feedback. Do you prefer this visual way of working, or are you quite happy working with the two sides of things completely independent of each other? Drop a comment down below. As always, all applicable links are in the description. It is an affiliate link. If you purchase the pro version through that link, it costs you no more money. But if you prefer to just go outside that link and search for it yourself without using the affiliate link, no hard feelings. You crack on. Not a problem at all. As always, my name is Paul C. This is WPTuts, and until next time, take care.